Welcome to the IEB. I think to some of you I had the opportunity to know yesterday morning when I was at Hotel Los Galgos, but part of the people was not at that moment in this place, so I'm going to present myself. My name is Pablo Custo. I am the Specialized Program Director at IEB. The place where you are right now is a business school. We are the academic sponsor of the Congress, and it's important for you to know that the place where you are based right now is maybe the best known business school in Spain for the financial sector. So we are mainly focused in finance. We do a lot of programs for banks, saving banks, portfolio managers, insurance companies, and we organize plenty of conferences, seminars, and this is why when we spoke with Catherine Virgo, we were very happy to join this project and to work with her. And this is why we organize a kind of trip this afternoon. So as you may know, after this conference, you will be able to go to the Madrid Stock Exchange. It is a very nice palace. Unfortunately, right now, it's not a palace. It's only a palace, sorry. It's not a trading room. On Tuesday, we went with Catherine, and it's much more a museum right now. So as you know, the market right now is electronic, as in many places in the world. So it's really nice, have nice paintings, nice computers, nice screens, but there's nobody there. So I remember that I told to Catherine the other day, we used to organize some trips to London. So 10, 15 years ago, we used to send our students to London, and we visited the IPE, International Petroleum Exchange, live. We used to visit LME, London Metal Exchange. It was so nice. Everybody was shouting. It was so active and so nice. But right now, all the markets are electronic. It's very efficient from a market point of view, but it's so boring when you go there and you visit. So that's why either you have an electronic market, which is very efficient, but there's no sense to visit. Either you have places like Madrid Stock Exchange, which is really beautiful, and even you will see how the people were doing the trading on the 19th century. So there's a lot of history behind. So it's a very old building. But the real truth is that the people working on the Madrid Stock Exchange are not there. They are on the surroundings of Madrid in a very standard building. So the place that you're going to visit right now is really a very interesting place. In fact, it is the place where we organize our closing, all the ceremonies and so on. This is the place that we used to use. After that, you will be visiting BBVA. BBVA has a nice palace in Recoletos. If the weather is so nice as now, we will try to go by walking. It's only like 10 minutes. It's called the Marqués de Salamanca Palace, and it's an area where you have like nice places. We'll have a cocktail, a very nice speech from somebody from BBVA, but it's also a place where you have a lot of paintings. In fact, one of the most famous paintings in Spain is there. It's from Goya. When you will be entering in the palace, you will be on the right side. There's a kind of stair. So up on the stair, it will be protected. You will see a rope. But one of the most famous paintings from Goya is just there. So I recommend you to see it. You are not going to be able to go there because there's a rope, but you will see it. But it's a place where BBVA people work. In fact, the chairman of BBVA has one desk there. So we are only allowed to use, the basement where you have plenty of lobbies and nice places for the cocktail. Okay, apart from that logistic aspect, today we are going to have Rodrigo Villamizar with us. Rodrigo is one of the best professors of the school. He has been teaching here many years. He's professor at IEB. He's also a professor at Universidad de San Diego. He's an associate professor at San Diego State, and he teaches plenty of matters. Here at IEB, he has been teaching topics related with renewable energies. He's an expert in watergy, how to use water as a source of energy. It's one of his expertise. But he's also an expert in management and competitiveness. In fact, today he's going to explain us his theory about management and competitiveness. He wrote a book, and his presentation is going to be based also on the idea which is behind this book, is that most of us, men, states, cities, companies, should have like a big diet, but a nutritive diet, in order to maintain our vitamins in our body, but to try to lose, some weight. And that's something which is applicable in many countries in Europe, applied to the public sector. In many families in Spain, applied to leverage. In many companies that unfortunately had to fire people during last years. So this is a trend, at least in Europe, which really is very supported by main economists. So his theory is very original, and I think this is a speech that we are not going to forget, because Rodrigo is always teaching original things. He's a very creative person, and he likes to create theories instead of following them. So, Rodrigo, it is your turn, and thank you for being here. Thank you. I think it's not.
So I apologize for that, but I think we could have a little bit of fun talking about some of the topics that I've been working on recently. Let me give you, let's go to conversions first, and of course I am delighted to be here. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you all for being present. I'm more than happy to share a few ideas that we're putting forward. They're already been put in a book, and there is an English version of the book. The title is going to be very appealing. It's going to be called The Perfect Diet for Companies. People are thinking about nutrition and health and fitness, so why don't we apply that to companies and to management? In my work, competitiveness and management really go together. They're almost two sides of the same coin. Therefore, I will try to explain a little bit, give you the background, and then we go to the PowerPoint presentation. But I need to say a few things before that. Thank you, Pablo, for a very nice introduction. Second, I don't like PowerPoints. I think PowerPoints are terrible. We should get rid of them. I think that somehow there could be soon, particularly in the US universities, a new cause of death by PowerPoint. So having said that, I am going to use a PowerPoint, but I'm going to leave it at the end of the presentation. The second thing is, I was a head of a diplomatic mission for Colombia in Japan. And my presentations in Japan and in Spain, I have a Spanish nationality as well, and Colombian, I see the differences between when a speaker comes in and presents himself or herself. Usually the Japanese apologize for something, always. Americans, probably the smartest ones, and I mean that, they come up with a joke, always. And a joke is very important because it puts the whole audience in a different state of mind and more receptive to the ideas. I wish I could tell you a joke right now, so I could get you a little bit on the positive side of the things that I'm going to say here today. But I am terrible at telling jokes, so I'm not even going to try to do that. The other thing that I want to share with you is, I think that we all somehow suffer from ADD. The attention deficit disorder is something that everybody has a little bit. It's just like autism. I mean, we all have a little tiny percentage. Some people have a little bit more. But I think that more than ADD is ADC, attention deficit collapse. And what I see in presentations is that after 18 minutes, attention collapses. So what I'm going to try to do, and by the way, the TED Talks are very, very smart because they only use 18 minutes. That means, they use the whole attention span. I'm going to try to do sort of a 15, 20, 18 minutes of trying to provoke and tell you the basics of why I think that we should reconsider and think again our management theories and our competitiveness approach to performance in companies, in countries, in cities. And then I will use a PowerPoint. But the PowerPoint is going to be sort of refreshing the ideas, and if I've forgotten something in the main presentation, I will take those buckets. So having said that, let me start by giving you just a little bit of a background of where I come from. Because I think that you'll understand that in my evolution, particularly in my previous life, I was more into practical matters. I did my undergraduate studies in engineering, both electrical and mechanical. You can't get more practical than that. Then I went to the University of Texas. I did operations research and went into energy. Energy is very practical at the end of the day. How is it that we use all these resources? Some are clean, some are not so clean, but at the end of the day is to produce order. The more concentrated that energy, the more order we get. The more competitive that energy that we put into systems, the better we get at producing results. Mr. Newcomen, Scottish, 1712, he applied the steam engine. It was to try to get this water out of the mines. It wasn't until 50 years ago that Watts really changed the machine, and the carburetor in particular, and said, no. We're going to, from 5 cycles every 20 seconds, I'm going to do 5 cycles every 1 second. And then we started developing more concentrated energy, more order, more results, more competitiveness. We went to the Otto's engine, diesel engine, and then the internal combustion engine, 100 cycles per second, 1,000 cycles per second, and then the Laval with the turbine, and then the jet engine, 1 million cycles per second. Now we have the Pentium 4, and the laser beam. So I come from the energy sector, and I get a little bit offended when people say that we have to save energy. No, we have to use energy. We have to use it efficiently. We have to use it rationally. We have to use it. We should manage competitiveness into the energy sector, and that's what I've been doing. So I did my economics as a graduate student at the University of Texas in Austin, thinking that I really would like to go from practice into theory. So people usually go back the other way. I used to think that an economist was a person anyone who could see something working in practice and would ask if that would work in theory. The fact of the matter is that economists are the ones who should tell us how to put practice into that theoretical framework. And that's what I've been trying to do again with this topic. Having said that, let me show you not even a 1-minute video that the New York Times puts out. I highly recommend that you see them because they are, they're very, very interesting. Here it is. And I think that this video is going to show you my definition management to competitiveness. That kind of a symbiosis. Let me put it here. Close this. Put this in here. There you go.
We may think of lions and sharks among the most successful predators in nature, but lions and sharks catch about 50% of their prey, at best. Dragonflies, on the other hand, catch up to 95% of their prey. What enables them to do this? Scientists have found from recording signals in the brain that they can focus on one object at a time, picking out their prey from a swarm of other insects. They have separate sets of muscles for 4 different wings. That means they can fly upside down, they can pivot 360 degrees, they can fly backwards, and they can fly 30 miles an hour. And they have among the best eyes of any creature in nature. When a dragonfly is flying at you, it can see you as it's coming toward you and as it's going away, giving them the chance to escape even the quickest and most agile animals that want to eat them.
Okay. We'll get back to this. Evolutionary theory, particularly because economists finally were saying, we have to incorporate behavioral considerations. Behavioral economics, as you know, is becoming big. How do we understand management? This pushing the boundaries of evolution for optimum performance. How can we do that? Always we have to refer necessarily to Darwin, but Darwin was talking about the individuals. He was talking about individual evolution, the fittest were the champions in that context. And we usually ask ourselves, why is it that if evolution drives everything and we are pushed to try to become as good as the dragonfly? Dragonfly 300 million years ago were the size of a goat or a small cow, actually. They were clumsy. They couldn't move. They were easy prey. Whatever dinosaurs or whatever animals there, they almost wiped them out. But they started slowly but surely trying to capitalize on those things that gave it a little competitive advantage. And I think that we finally get probably the most efficient animal in nature. 90% success rate is very impressive no matter what you do, what you think. So again, but why is it that there are certain behaviors? And I'm going to try to translate this into the company later. For the time being, let's just think in terms of the individual. Why is it that some individuals don't behave as if survival was the prime driving force? Why is it that somebody could jump into a pool to try to save anyone, even a son or daughter, when that puts your life at risk? Or what about the guy who is about to take his car out of a parking lot, and as soon as he gets there, he sees that somebody else is waiting, and he says, I'm going to show you who is the boss here. And he just sits there, takes his time, because he wants to show it. He's wasting time. He's probably making that other person very angry. Neither one are gaining anything, and that's part of the behavior that we exhibit in most of our daily lives. At least we see 1 or 2 or 3 cases every now and then. So what I think is that we had to move, and thank goodness Mr. Dawkins with the extended phenotype came in and he said, you know, that's right. Because actually, what evolves is not the individual, it's the genes. The genes are the main actors. Those are the ones that try by rescuing somebody when he falls into the pool or whatever it is, or is in danger. Somehow the genes, this extended phenotype, is what is making sure that the system works and that the evolution works. You may agree or not with this theory, but I think that it's very interesting, and I've gone over it to try to see if there could be any applications. Now, again, I like to use metaphors. I like to use, this is not perfect comparisons, but I think that in the company, something similar happens. Companies have genes. In the genome of a company, or a city, or any type of organizations, are probably the most successful entities that humans have created, and look at the results. I mean, I guess when our ancestors 30, 40,000 years ago were roaming in Africa, they had to think that they had a better success rate if they would stick together. In fact, studies show that probably 150 individuals was the sort of ideal, not more than that. That would become a little bit tricky to handle for the shaman or for the tribe chief. But anyway, so these companies, these organizations, these collective efforts that we have been so good at developing somehow behave as if they were trying to make the genome and the basic genes of those organizations survive, not necessarily each individual company. What are the genes of a company? The genes of a company are the shareholders, the employees, the stakeholders in general, the customers. That's part of the genes. So one of the things that we have done in the book is, if this is what is happening in the commercial world, and not only in the business in general, but also very specific in countries, organizations, cities, and companies. If that's what's happening, how can we develop a model to maximize those functions, to make those companies, entities, survive more successful? At the end of the day, competitiveness is evolution on an accelerator. It's pushing the evolution as far as you can get. Innovation is pushing the boundaries of whatever we know in order to get new ideas to incorporate it into what we already know. So here is what I've done. It took me about almost 4 years to build a data bank of most of the variables that the World Competitiveness Institute of Switzerland, the one that publishes the competitiveness yearbook every year. Very reputable, probably the best entity. It's supported by the IND, it's supported by Harvard, has a very good relationship with them, and the World Bank. They have an incredible database. They have over 420 variables to measure competitiveness. So what I did was, I got that. We built our own data bank and was able to run a cluster analysis to see which are the basic, the most fundamental variables that really determine competitiveness, according to their own definition of competitiveness. At the end of the day, to make a very long story short, I found that there are 3 fundamental The cluster analysis, as you know, works by picking bags of variables, sets, in which the variance it maximizes to the outside and minimizes in the interior of the subset chosen. We finally got to 3. And looking into the variables in those 3 bags or packages or sets, one of them had most of the infrastructure-related variables. Infrastructure in terms of physical infrastructure and logical infrastructure, the type of organization of the companies, the type of support networks, distribution networks, light, water, roads, whatever. Anything that had to do with the supporting role of competitiveness, we said, this looks like infrastructure to us. We could have baptized it differently with a different name, but we did. Infrastructure. The other one was productivity. Efficiency variables were in that second set. Productivity of labor, productivity of capital, anything that had to do with making things better, getting a better output by a certain given input. And the last one was the technology, the knowledge variables. Everything that related to knowledge and innovation, anything that increased that knowledge pool of the company or city or whatever it was. So competitiveness for us is the relationship between those 3 variables. You give me those 3 variables and I can tell you in your company how good you are in relation to where you should be. And that's the sort of the tricky part. How do I know which is the top? Think of all the companies trying to climb up to a mountain. There's a summit there, which we don't know where it is. Everybody trying. What the model does, we use an econometric model, co-integration techniques to estimate the parameters. And we finally derive at a function for companies. We took, for instance, we run 25 multinational corporations. We did 23 cities in the world and 16 countries. The US, 4 Latin American countries, 4 Western European countries, 4 Southeast Asian countries, China, Korea, and Japan. And we got some interesting results. The very consistent results, telling us that those functions behave in a way in which we can actually identify each company or city or country in that competitiveness surface, let us call it. And by doing that, we can tell where the company is, and even if we don't know where the summit really is, we can look at the leader. For instance, in our 25 multinational corporations, GE was the best performing company. So we said maybe GE is close to the summit. We'll give it 100 points. And let's see how the rest of the companies relate to GE, to the leader, or to London in the cases of cities, or to the US in the cases of countries. And what type of efforts do they have to make in infrastructure, in productivity, and in technology to try to get to that summit or to the level of the leader. So that's basically what the exercise was. Each company has a room for improvement, and the improvement is associated with the efforts in management to comply with the goals set by the customers, by the employees in a way, and also by the shareholders. Crisis comes when this model doesn't quite work. If a section of the employees, particularly the top level executives, try to take advantage of their position in relation to the rest, sacrificing the rest. As we saw it just a few years ago with the big financial crisis, then the system breaks down. Somehow there are some indications that management, this new way to look at management, could tell us how to approach the problems of companies, again, any type of organization. An organization, by definition, is more than two individuals with a strategy and an objective or goal to be achieved. Having said that, I think that behavioral economics is bringing all this into the new realm of economy, of economic thinking. Books like Thinking Fast and Slow, like Kahneman, Nudge, The Tipping Point, Freakonomics. I mean, they're all telling us, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that we're doing. It's evolutionary psychology, it's behavioral sociology, but economics can deal with all that. And I think that as an economist, we always, my feeling, we always kind of try to look down on administration, business, because they don't have the models, they don't have, again, I told you where I come from. Electrical engineers, by the way, and mechanical engineers were the first ones to develop the simulation models back in the 1940s, 1930s. Control models, the automatic pilot that we all, today, we have control models for the economy. Just as a plane is flying out there, we know how to adjust things and give a certain type of path or route that the economy should follow. And let's see how the different variables have to accommodate in order to accomplish that model. So all this is to say that I think that we could use the economic way of thinking and the incorporation of behavioral and evolutionary type of theories in order to advance and help companies or any type of organization. That is basically the overall picture. I'm going to show you one by one some of the slides. And what I want to do now is, if that's true, and I would like to hear from some of you, maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm making assumptions that I shouldn't have made. If this is true, why don't we can have metaphors. When I developed the model, we have an algorithm, and it estimates the functions. And we said, how do we show it to people that in a sort of an appealing way? How can I get people excited about seeing her company, his country, their city in a different way? But one of the interesting things is that our functions, and I will show you briefly some of them around in a minute, are very similar to those found for trees in biotechnology. Trees, as you know, have different functions. The Japanese have developed a lot of stuff in this area. They have a different mathematical function for the growth of the branches, different from the trunk and different from the roots. So what we did is, why don't we, this is just a way of showing, this is just the part that is not as serious as some people would have liked, but anyway, it's illustrative. What if we compare cities or companies or countries to trees? I want to see, what does my tree look like, my company in terms of a tree. And then the next step, after we did that, the next step was, what about all this diet revolution and fitness that I was mentioning at the beginning? Why don't we compare companies to a human body? Because the fact of the matter is that there are three main components in any type of diet that play just as critical role as those that we found for competitiveness. And those are the carbs. I mean, the only energy that you get is from carbs, proteins, or fats. And they have a place in the body. There's a way that they combine in order to give you. Do we need all three of them? Yes, we do. People need fats, people need carbs, people need proteins. It is in the proportions in which we use it or misuse it that we fail sometimes. So let me show you the slides for this second part. People talk about the oldest profession in the world, but I think that management is the oldest profession. In fact, there's a big debate where what came first? Was it the organization or was it management? A lot of people think that, there was companies and people started getting together and organizing themselves. We need management. I think it was the other way around. Management created organizations. For the reasons that I was mentioning, just try to think of in terms of the genome. The military brought probably the first, the first examples that we have, not only coming way back from the Greek and the Romans, but the military has always been at the forefront in management development. This is some of the books that I mentioned to you. We've had a number of people and great thinkers, economists, being part of what I think is the body of management theory that we have today. Taylor was probably the first one that we always heard of first. And each one of them, in this case a winner, they show us systems of how to arrange the different parts of the system of those systems, inputs, outputs, and processes to get the results. So management has a long history. A lot of people have participated in making it richer, and so when we look at companies, for instance, in this case, to make it specific about productive companies, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we were missing all this time? You know, the nectar tube, and you've seen this many times before. If you keep looking at it, it starts jumping. All of a sudden, it starts showing you something that is not, that you didn't see at first. And I think that that's what is happening to us. We're looking at certain areas that perhaps were right in front of us, and we did not quite grasp what the content was. I mentioned, and we saw the video, there's a way to evolve in a way that we can actually achieve an optimum level of performance. An optimal level of performance is what we believe is all about. It's competitiveness, and it's competitiveness management. If we could just draw the type of mathematical functions that these two guys, Federer and Alrod, have to do in their brains. They don't know they're doing it, by the way, but the brain is doing it somehow, because otherwise they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't be so successful. That gets us closer and closer to efficiency levels that we saw in the previous video. So, to wrap it up and to sum it up, humans have genes. There's a phenotype there. What evolves? Actually, we can debate it, but there are some things there that are probably transcending what we do. Companies, on the other side, we think have certain core that is the important part of any kind of organized effort. Metaphors, as I said, we can use them. I've used the trees. What is a perfect tree? The Japanese, again, they have a definition of what a perfect tree is. The company that I created to do this is called Boramets. Boramets is a tree, is a legend from the northern part of Japan, the island of Hokkaido. And in Hokkaido, the natives believe they have the tree of competitiveness. It's called Boramets. And the tree of competitiveness was one that if you took care of it and gave it tender loving care, it would produce melons, but if you didn't, it would produce goats. Why goats? That's beyond my comprehension. But anyway, that was the idea behind it. Evolution, competitiveness, optimal performance is what I think is the actual realm for any type of management effort. This is the Boramets tree. Now, back to companies. If competitiveness is a combination of these three variables, infrastructure, productivity, and technology, and these are the functions that we've found in every one of them. Every type of analysis that we've done on a group of companies, cities, or countries, we found this. In some cases, they vary. Not always we have a linear function for infrastructure. Not always we have a sort of a low power function for productivity. And not always we have the high power exponential function for technology. But this is pretty much what we have. If you look at countries, for instance, this is very interesting, and now that you're here in Spain, you can understand why Spain is in the economic shape that it is. In these cases, where we've done this exercise for countries, we usually find that underdeveloped countries, developing countries, locate around this area. You'll have Congo, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, maybe Malaysia. And as soon as you get past this point, you have the more developed countries, all of them, or pretty much within this part. So you have the infant, let's call it, if we apply what Rastow's stages of economic growth. But let's say that these are the infant countries, and then here somehow you have the adolescent countries, and then you have the mature countries. Spain should be in the mature area. But when we look at the vector of how Spain allocates its resources, we found that Spain has done an incredible amount of investment in infrastructure. Very little in technology, almost nothing in productivity. It should have been here. The US doesn't have a very good infrastructure. Bridges collapse. The electric grid resembles me. I was a minister of energy in Colombia, so I can compare. I used to work for 5 years in the Texas Public Utility Commission. The grid is a third world country grid. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the U.S. puts most of its resources into technology. And pretty good chunk in productivity. It puts the money where the mouth is. So this happens also with companies. We can check and see. Actually, we locate each company, each country, each city in this that I call the competitiveness surface, and we see how much effort do they have to make to get to the top, and also how do they compare to each other. This is the formula for competitiveness that we developed, and we transform it into a kind of a BMI, body mass index. So we call it the company body mass index. We include productivity factors, and we assimilate them to carbohydrates. Infrastructure, we think that they behave pretty much like fats in the body, and proteins as technology. As you know, the golden rule is that you should have probably less than 15%, 15 to 20% fat. You should have about 30% carbs, and you should have about 50%. So by allocating that into each one of the categories that we study, we come up with the human body. And the company variables relate very well to each one. When you have a human body, you have the lower part is probably the one that gives you the mobility, strength. That's more like the productivity area. And then you have all these variables in the company that are associated to that strength and the sort of a carb effect that you need. Fats, as we know, accumulate around the waist, around the middle section, but they're important, and we need to check them. So we have a number of variables that pretty much coincide one-to-one to those. And same thing for the upper part, the thinking, the creative part of the body, which is more like the technology and innovation. So companies do have problems. These are the 20 companies that we studied. Levi's is bad. It's in bad physical shape. And some of them are in pretty good shape, very athletic. I told you about the trees. This is sort of the equivalent trees that we found at first, before we did any of the human body type of analogies. Inditech, by the way, is Zara. Zara has a huge problem. I mean, it's one of the most incredible companies. It's opening 500 new outlets in the world today, this year, basically in Spain. The case of Corte Inglés is absolutely amazing. You have Walmart, which has about 2 million employees throughout the world. It's in about 155 countries. The second largest department store in the world is Corte Inglés. It's in 2 countries, Spain and Portugal. That's it. So we have a way to identify how they need to push either infrastructure, productivity, or technology. Productivity, for instance, technology in Zara is very, very limited. And they say they don't even have laptops in the offices. So, okay, we're not going to get into that yet, but we have a sort of a good diagnosis of those. And we find companies and countries with all kinds of different shapes. Pretty much like a nature. For cities, for countries, same thing. This is the City Competitiveness Index, CBMI. So Nairobi and Bogota, bad shape. London, Vienna, incredible. New York, Paris. Madrid is somehow... Yeah. Same thing, a lot of infrastructure. Great. The best metro, I tell you, I live in San Diego, in Tokyo, here. To me, this is the place. If you want to not have to use your car, use the metro, use the bus system, the roads are incredible. But the problems are somewhere else. unfortunately. These are companies that we perceive in our analysis as fit. This is for the US, of course. So we, at the end of the day, we go to a company and we award them one of these three. We set up teams within the company, the red team, the white team, the yellow team. Each one has specific goals. One is completely in charge of carbs, the other one is in charge of proteins, and the other one is in charge of fats. And the dynamics that has been created in these cases is amazing. We have several examples to show. This is sort of at the end of the day, the type of results, the summary, where we calculate the CBMI and also the company, the nutritional achievement, and how many productivity carbs or infrastructure fats or technology proteins. Amen. I have given to Catherine, I think, that to the organizers, a copy of this presentation with a little more detail, in case you wanted, they'll get you. So this is what PD4C is. Perfect diet for companies. The case of energy is very specific and is very close to my heart. So I try to apply a lot of stuff when we compare carbohydrates, hydrocarbons, renewable energies, and so forth. The bottom line is, when you compare competitiveness, hydrocarbons are way ahead of everybody. And the world needs nuclear, by the way. Sorry, but it does need it. Unfortunately, I mean, I know Fukushima and the Germans don't want it. There is no way that we can diminish CO2 without going nuclear, somehow. Oil, is it ever going to run out? No, it's never going to run out. We're going to stop using oil one day, but there's going to be a lot of it there remaining under the ground. So we better accept it. We have a source, which is oil and gas and carbon and coal, which unfortunately is not clean. We have to clean it. There are technologies that are out there to clean it, but we're going to continue to use it. It's very efficient. It's the most efficient. Renewable energies, I love it, but they're not efficient. Low density. And low density in energy is a no-no. You want high density energy like hydrocarbons. Low density, too dispersed, the sun, the wind, geothermal, tidal, too expensive. You just not. I wish we could, but the fact of the matter. And this helps us to put it in perspective. We've run the same models, and number one is hydrocarbons by far. Then nuclear, and then the renewables. That's all I had to say, so if there's any question, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, is there any question, please? Yes? Yes, please. Yeah. Well, sorry, can you give the microphone?
It is sort of difficult, but maybe one thing to add to your concept. Because the essence of management, as I see it, is the creation and transmission of information. And when we think about that, we come to concepts and restrictions and folklore, which obviously will apply in both public and private sector as well. Information is created and transmitted by individuals with their own interests, and so on. So if you would comment how this would add to your broader approach. I am not a management expert. organized about management. So.
Thank you. Very, very interesting and provocative. I mean, information, and I think that you hit the nail on the head, is probably the most difficult area. The most difficult area to assess. We've taken companies from the IT sector. We've looked into the type of centers that do research and development to try to see if we can identify those three pillars, and then how can we combine them to get an optimum performance. The results so far hasn't been very encouraging. It's very difficult, and you just mentioned it. So I absolutely agree with you. We need to do more work on this. But if we can help the managers deal with these three variables, and on top of that, deal with information. I mean, big data is here, and small data is even more important than big data, particularly for the thousands and millions of small companies in the world. But without a good grasp of information, competitiveness, it's going to be very hard to do. I don't think that we're there yet, but I appreciate your comment. Yeah.
There was another question there, I think, before. Yeah.
First of all, it was a pretty interesting topic. I really like the approach that you take to it, very original. I do have several questions, and as a matter of fact, probably the questions already answered in the previous question. From more lines for me, at the time of the release of these results, was there any change in the price of the company listed in your analysis? That probably was some of my questions.
Yeah. That's the $100,000 question, by the way. One of the things that we lack here is the incorporation of financial indicators. One of the Nobel Prizes for behavioral economics, Schiller and Stefama, that's what they do. They look at the value, the price-earning ratios, and they look at Tobin's Q and see how can they predict what the value of the market is. We think that financial variables are an integral part of this analysis, and we are going to try to incorporate it. It's the same as what we were just talking about a while ago with information technology. The whole chapter that we have right now, in fact, we're developing commercially this. A company here in Spain, a company in Colombia, and a company in the U.S. The company in the U.S. is owned by a very good friend of mine, Nick Lowe. It's called Carbon Solutions America. And the idea is to put all corporate metrics in just one bundle. So we can do carbon footprint, corporate social responsibility, financial indicators, competitiveness indicators, all in one. I mentioned Nick Love, by the way, again, because he's about to marry a very good person that I'm sure that some of you know her, but her name is Sofia Vergara. She is one of the leading actresses in the TV series Modern Family today in the U.S. She's a Colombian, and I mentioned this just to share with you. But the fact is that we're putting this together to see how much reception this could be. So the idea of financial indicators and valuation, how does the market see the efforts by management, and how can you appreciate that from the outside? We should have labels, like you walk into a supermarket and you go to see it, that type of whatever product of food, and there's a label there. We should have labels for companies. I want to see the CBMI of a company that I'm going to buy shares. And in that particular context, we should have the financial indicators in addition to what we have today. So this is just in the very early stages, as we mentioned before.
Okay.
Jim Chen, Michigan State University, United States. If you're going to parameterize the growth functions according to technology, information, and productivity, why would you limit yourself to linear and power curves and exponential curves when the usual models, parametric models of technology uptake are specified as logistic curves? And with logistic curves, you can see that what happens is that in the initial first path, until you reach the inflection point, it does resemble some kind of parallel relationship, but especially when you're dealing with natural resources, as you exhaust a resource, you start hitting a ceiling, an asymptotic ceiling on your productivity. And if you add that to your toolkit, right, you have 3 additional models which are easily specified with a relatively trivial amount of math. One is the sigmoid function of the ordinary logistic curve. A second is the double-kinked double logistic curve that will indicate what happens when you have 2 successive technologies coming one upon the other. And a third possibility is competitive, destructive relationships, which wind up generating more sinusoid relationships, as the work of Locke and Volterra in population ecology. You're going to play, in other words, you're going to play with the biological metaphor. You might as well play with the entire toolkit, not just a few basic items.
Your point is very well taken, by the way. And I'm going to try to get your email address so we can chat specifically about this. In fact, one of the problems that we've had in estimating the functions, and you're right, I think that if we had a larger database and more observations in our time series, maybe we could have done more sophisticated type of approaches to those functions. This is like sometimes I talk about this as you either go for the $50 model or for the $5 million model. We've gone for the $50 model here. And this is still we wanted to see if there was something there, just to get to the first derivative. You're talking about the third derivative right now. So I appreciate it. And I would like to ask you more about your suggestions.
Okay, more questions? In my step, one question here.
I found Joseph Boreal, Pace University, New York City. I found your model fascinating, okay? And I think it's a very interesting approach to trying to define variables that relate to competitiveness. You can't hear me? What? Oh, is that better? It's better.
Good one. Much better.
I'm very interesting, and I think it's worthwhile trying to distill the words that we're talking about. You sort of interrupt the technology.
Yeah.
Now, here's my question. We deal with markets. So suppose you went into a market with 10 firms, and you said, let me analyze these 2 firms and make them optimal. Right? You're going to take this model and produce this CBMI approach. You're going to make them optimal either by helping them become optimal or by insisting they are. Over time, those 2 firms would take over the market, which would destroy the competition. So therefore, I conclude, if I follow your logic, that ultimately we not have competitive market. Which one would that find? telling you that you need something else that's going to generate the competition again. Otherwise, it seems to me like it all leads to consolidation. How do you do that?
This is not a zero-sum game type of approach. By one company becoming very competitive doesn't mean that others will be less so. So if I understand correctly what you're saying, so far we've been doing it on an individual basis. The only group analysis that we've done was the ones that I show you here. 25 companies, 26 cities, and 16 countries. But when we go, for instance, we've done one cluster of companies around Barcelona. We did one wine-producing cluster in Mendoza, in Argentina. And also we've done a number of companies in the renewable energy sector, some others in engineering and construction. So when we go, the first thing that we tell the company is, you have to get to know yourself. Let's see where are the carbs, where are the proteins, how much of that. Let me see the balance. We use outside sources to compare and see how close they are. I like to compare myself to General Electric because I think that it's very athletic, and I know so. But by doing that, and by estimating where each of those companies are in the sort of the competitiveness surface, all we're doing is, here is where you are, and here's where you are, and number one will have to make so much effort, in particular in one of the three areas, to get moving, which doesn't affect at all. Now, again, talking about the $50 model that we've developed. I think that competition, and depending on the relative concentration of companies, of course there's going to be some influence by one of the companies to the others. If I take the 5 major oil companies and take a bunch of little ones, I'm sure that somehow the results of one group is going to affect the other one. But so far, the assumption that we're making is they're totally independent. They're competing in the market, but their competitiveness, the level of optimum utilization of their own resources is not contingent on what others do. We have 2 chapters in the book. One is me against the world. Is one chapter, which is, hey, me and the ones that are competing with me. And the other one is me, myself, and I. The other one is I have to look at myself. I'm here. I've got to go to the gym. I've got to take the proper nutrients and food. And I have to live a healthy life. That's for me to do. I owe that to myself. In terms of competing with others, I think that you're right. But again, we don't have that level of disaggregation in our data to even pick up the effect of the market upon the companies. Anything else?
Any additional question?
I think that.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Villamizar, thank you very much for the audience.